The coastal town of Havenwood shimmered under the late afternoon sun, its quaint charm a stark contrast to the storm brewing within Michael Thorne. From the outside, Michael was the picture of success: a sharp suit, a booming real estate business, and a beautiful wife, Sarah, whose laughter echoed through their elegant seaside home. He was charismatic, with a smile that could disarm anyone and a knack for making ambitious deals. But behind the polished veneer, Michael was drowning in a sea of his own making. His ambitious investments in volatile offshore properties had soared spectacularly, leaving him with little more than paper losses, compounded by a high-stakes gambling addiction that had spiraled wildly out of control. Fueled by a desperate hope to win back his losses, the debts were a suffocating shroud, threatening to engulf everything he held dear. The bank calls were relentless, their tones shifting from polite reminders to stern warnings. The threats from shadowy loan sharks, men with cold eyes and even colder words, grew more menacing with each passing day, hinting at consequences far beyond financial ruin. He saw no way out, no escape from the relentless tide of his financial ruin, which now felt like a crushing weight on his chest, stealing his breath and his sleep. His younger brother, Daniel, a quiet, dependable architect known for his meticulous nature and calm demeanor, often visited, blissfully oblivious to the true extent of Michael's despair. Daniel genuinely admired Michael, seeing him as the successful older brother who had always navigated life with a certain unshakable flair, seemingly capable of turning any challenge into an opportunity. Sarah, too, felt a profound sense of security in their life, anchored by Michael's apparent success and their comfortable existence. However, a nagging worry about Michael's increasingly long hours at the office and his occasional, sudden withdrawn silences sometimes pricked at her peace of mind. She attributed these shifts in his mood and behavior to the immense pressures of running a thriving business, never once suspecting the dark abyss of deceit and desperation that lay hidden just beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life. The idea, born from sheer desperation, came to Michael in a fit of desperate clarity, a desperate gamble to erase his past and start anew. He would stage his own death, a dramatic disappearance that would allow him to shed his identity and escape the relentless pursuit of his creditors. The plan was meticulously crafted over weeks, born from countless sleepless nights, fueled by strong, black coffee and a chilling, almost clinical, resolve. A seemingly spontaneous solo boating trip would serve as his final act in this life. He chose a remote stretch of Havenwood's coastline, notorious for its unpredictable weather, treacherous currents, and hidden rocky inlets, a place where maritime accidents were regrettably not uncommon, and the recovery of a body could prove frustratingly impossible. He spent days preparing, subtly leaving a breadcrumb trail of carefully placed clues designed to create a convincing narrative of an accidental drowning. This included a discarded, slightly damaged life jacket found tangled in kelp on a desolate beach, a wallet with his identification conveniently scattered nearby, and a half-eaten sandwich and a thermos of lukewarm coffee left casually in his abandoned fishing boat, which would be found drifting aimlessly miles offshore, as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The day came, a Tuesday bathed in an unseasonably warm sun that belied the dark scheme unfolding. He shared a final, seemingly ordinary breakfast with Sarah, then kissed her goodbye, a kiss laden with more finality than either of them could possibly know, telling her casually that he would be back before dinner. He drove his small vessel, a modest fishing boat he had recently purchased specifically for this purpose, out into the calm morning waters, making sure to be seen by a few lingering fishermen near the harbour entrance, establishing an alibi. Then, as the golden light of the fading afternoon began to paint the horizon, and under the cover of the increasing solitude of the open water, he executed his chilling plan. He slipped stealthily over the side, leaving the boat to its destined fate, disappearing into the vast, indifferent ocean, carrying with him only a small, waterproof bag containing a new identity, a pre-arranged sum of cash, and an untraceable burner phone. He left behind his entire former life, and with it, the crushing weight of his monumental deception. The news hit Havenwood like a sudden, unexpected tsunami. Michael Thorne, the successful businessman, presumed dead, lost at sea. Sarah's world, which had seemed so stable, crumbled into a million pieces. The initial shock gave way to a grief so profound it felt like a physical wound, an unbearable ache deep in her soul. The local police, along with the Coast Guard, launched a full-scale search. Their patrol boats combing the treacherous waters day and night, their divers meticulously exploring the murky depths, but to no avail. Days turned into agonizing weeks, hope dwindling with each passing tide, each fruitless search mission. Sarah clung desperately to the hope that he would be found, alive, praying for a miracle that never came. Throughout this agonizing period, Daniel was her unwavering rock, his quiet strength and dependable presence a constant comfort as she navigated the unbearable reality of her loss. He helped her field the countless calls from concerned friends and bewildered business associates, managed the initial onslaught of inquiries from the authorities, and simply sat with her in the suffocating silence of their once vibrant home, offering silent support. Eventually, after a month of exhaustive and fruitless searching, with no body recovered and no trace found, Michael Thorne was officially declared presumed deceased. The funeral was a blur for Sarah, a somber procession of whispered condolences and hollow comfort, a surreal tableau she moved through in a fog of disbelief. But the nightmare, far from ending, was only just beginning. The true extent of Michael's hidden financial woes began to surface with terrifying speed. Creditors emerged from the shadows, like predatory sharks sensing blood, demanding immediate payment, threatening legal action, and painting a grim picture of Michael's undisclosed financial practices. Sarah, who had genuinely believed Michael to be a shrewd, conservative businessman, was confronted with a staggering mountain of debt, a secret life of reckless spending, high-stakes gambles, and failed speculative ventures that had been meticulously hidden from her. Their beautiful home, their savings, their very future, everything was suddenly at risk. The profound grief she felt was now compounded by a crushing sense of betrayal, a horrifying, sickening realization that the man she loved, the man she thought she knew, had built their entire life together on a foundation of sand, on lies that now threatened to bury her. As you are listening to this unfolding tragedy, take a moment to reflect on the hidden burdens people carry beneath their composed exteriors. It makes you wonder, does it not? What secrets might be lurking just beneath the surface of the lives around us, even those of our closest friends and family? Share your initial thoughts on Michael's desperate and selfish act in the comments. We love hearing your perspectives and engaging with your insights. Part 2A: The Widower's New Dawn. The years that followed Michael's disappearance were a brutal crucible for Sarah. The initial wave of public sympathy, though comforting at first, eventually receded, leaving her to face the harsh realities of her situation seemingly alone. The creditors were relentless, their demands growing louder and more insistent, circling like vultures around a dying carcass, picking at the remnants of Michael's ruined empire. Sarah, with little to no business experience beyond managing a household budget, and a mountain of debt that dwarfed her understanding, found herself utterly overwhelmed, suffocating under the weight of financial jargon and legal threats. She had no choice but to sell their beautiful seaside home, the symbol of their once perfect life, liquidate almost everything they owned, and move into a modest, cramped rental apartment in a less affluent, more anonymous part of Havenwood. Her pride, once a quiet comfort and a source of dignity, was now a constant, gnawing ache, a bitter humiliation. To make ends meet, she took on extra shifts at the local library, her former volunteer position now a grim necessity, and tutored high school students in the evenings, anything to keep a semblance of financial stability and provide for her young daughter. The shame of Michael's hidden life and reckless irresponsibility gnawed at her, a bitter pill she swallowed daily, alongside the lingering pain of his absence. Through it all, Daniel remained her unwavering anchor, a constant in the stormy seas of her new reality. He never judged her, never questioned her decisions, and, crucially, never asked intrusive questions about Michael's reckless past, respecting her pain and her privacy. Instead, he simply helped, consistently and without fanfare. He spent countless hours poring over intimidating legal documents with her, patiently deciphering the convoluted financial jargon that seemed designed to confuse. He connected her with a pro bono lawyer he knew, offered astute practical advice on negotiating with creditors, and, most importantly, offered a quiet, consistent, and comforting presence. He helped her move, repaired leaky faucets and drafts in her new, smaller apartment, and frequently brought over home cooked meals when he knew she was too exhausted and heartbroken to prepare anything for herself. He played tirelessly with their young daughter, Emily, filling the immense void left by Michael's absence with laughter, patience, and a steady, loving presence. Emily, still too young to fully grasp the permanence and betrayal of her father's absence, found profound comfort and stability in her Uncle Daniel's gentle nature and unwavering affection. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the nature of Sarah and Daniel's relationship began to shift, evolving beyond mere familial obligation. Their bond, initially forged in the crucible of shared grief and overwhelming financial hardship, deepened into something far more profound, something elemental and true. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a quiet strength that transcended words, a shared history of pain and resilience. Daniel saw the remarkable, resilient woman beneath the layers of pain and sorrow, her quiet determination to rebuild her life for Emily's sake, her courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Sarah, in turn, saw in Daniel a man of unwavering integrity, deep compassion, and a steadfast love that asked for nothing in return, simply giving. He was the antithesis of Michael, grounded, dependable, and true in every sense of the word. 5 years have passed since Michael's disappearance. The sharp, agonizing edges of Sarah's grief had softened into a dull ache, a permanent part of her emotional landscape, but no longer debilitating. She had found a new, quiet strength within herself, a profound sense of self-reliance she never knew she possessed. The seemingly insurmountable debts, through her relentless hard work and Daniel's astute financial guidance, were finally manageable, a significant burden lifted from her shoulders. She was not just surviving, she was actively building a new life, brick by patient brick, from the ashes of the old. One crisp autumn evening, as they sat together on her small porch swing, watching Emily chase fireflies in the fading twilight, their laughter echoing softly in the cool air, Daniel gently took Sarah's hand. The air between them was thick with unspoken emotions, with years of shared silence and quiet companionship. "Sarah," he began, his voice soft, almost a whisper, "I know it has been an incredibly long and difficult road for you, and I know Michael was. He was everything to you once, a central part of your world." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes distant, lost in thought. "But in these past years," Daniel continued, his grip tightening gently on her hand. "I have come to care for you, more than I ever thought possible. And for Emily. We could build something new, something honest and true together." Sarah looked at him, truly looked at him, seeing past the familiar features of Michael's brother, and saw not a lingering ghost of her past, but a tangible, hopeful future filled with genuine warmth, unwavering support, and authentic companionship. Daniel was not a replacement for Michael, nor did she seek one. He was a different, equally profound love, a quiet, steadfast affection that had grown organically from shared adversity. It was a love built on genuine hardship, mutual respect, and a deep, abiding friendship that had blossomed, unexpectedly, into something infinitely more. She said yes, her voice barely a whisper, yet filled with a conviction that settled deep in her heart. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, held at the quaint Havenwood chapel overlooking the sea. It was a celebration not of a grand, sweeping romance, but of quiet resilience, enduring hope, and the healing power of genuine human connection. Sarah wore a simple, elegant ivory dress, her smile serene and genuine, reflecting an inner peace she had not felt in years. Daniel, usually reserved and composed, beamed with a quiet, profound joy, his eyes alight with a love that had patiently waited. They exchanged vows, promising to cherish and support each other, not just as husband and wife, but as partners who had navigated the darkest of storms and, against all odds, found solace and enduring strength in each other's unwavering presence. It felt profoundly right, a testament to enduring hope and the possibility of new beginnings, even after the deepest heartbreaks. The town of Havenwood, having watched Sarah's quiet suffering and Daniel's steadfast loyalty over the years, rejoiced with them, seeing their union as a beautiful testament to the enduring power of love and a beautiful, well-deserved second act for a woman who had known such profound loss. It is remarkable, is it not, how life, in its infinite complexity, finds a way to move forward, to bloom anew, even after unimaginable heartbreak and betrayal. What do you think about Sarah and Daniel's evolving relationship and their eventual marriage? Is it a testament to resilience and the capacity for new love, or does it feel complicated by the persistent, unseen shadow of Michael's past? Let us know your nuanced thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and please, if you are enjoying this compelling story, hit the subscribe button to join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. Part 3. The Ghost's Return. Michael Thorne had not drowned. His meticulous plan had unfolded exactly as he had envisioned. He had taken advantage of the treacherous currents off Havenwood's coast to carry away his empty boat, making his disappearance appear unequivocally accidental. Meanwhile, he, with a waterproof bag containing a new identity, a pre-arranged sum of cash that was his last remaining asset, and an untraceable burner phone, had swum silently to a predetermined, secluded cove miles down the coast. From there, awaiting contact, paid handsomely from his last hidden funds, ferried him under the cloak of darkness to a remote coastal town hundreds of miles away, a place where he was utterly unknown and could vanish without a trace. He painstakingly reinvented himself as Mark Johnson, a reclusive artist with a vague, carefully crafted past and a quiet, unassuming demeanor. He found work as a handyman, his hands, once accustomed to signing lucrative real estate contracts and gesturing grandly in boardrooms, now calloused and rough from manual labor. His new life was one of stark anonymity, a stark contrast to the opulent existence and social standing he had so carelessly left behind. The initial, intoxicating relief of escaping his crushing debts and the relentless pursuit of his creditors slowly, insidiously, morphed into a corrosive, soul-crushing loneliness. The fleeting thrill of having outsmarted the system, of having pulled off the ultimate deception, faded rapidly, replaced by a hollow ache in his chest. He missed Sarah desperately. He missed Emily, the young daughter he had barely known, whose face he now only saw in blurred, aged photographs he carried secretly. He yearned for the comfort of his old life, the familiar rhythm of Havenwood, the warmth of genuine connection. He relentlessly justified his actions to himself, repeating the mantra that it was for their good, that his insurmountable debts would have surely ruined them all. But deep down, a colder, darker truth lingered. He had chosen himself, his own escape over the well-being of his family. Years passed, 6 in total, marked by a quiet, self-imposed exile. 6 long years of watching his old life from afar, through snatched, furtive glimpses of online news articles about Havenwood, or occasionally a brave, carefully executed search for Sarah's name on obscure social media platforms, always shielded by a VPN and a meticulously crafted fake persona. He saw reports of her struggles, the painful sale of their cherished home, and then, slowly, her quiet, determined rebuilding. A sharp pang of guilt, quickly stifled and rationalized away, would often arise in those moments. And then, one day, he saw it a fleeting mention, an innocuous social media post, of her new marriage to Daniel, his younger brother. The news hit him like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left him gasping for air, stunned and reeling. Sarah, his wife, the woman he had abandoned, now married to his own brother. The image of them together seared itself into his mind, an unbearable, searing betrayal. A complete and utter obliteration of the world he had so meticulously orchestrated his escape from. The shock of this revelation ignited a cold, consuming fury within him, eclipsing any lingering vestiges of guilt or regret. He had sacrificed everything. He had given up his very identity, his entire existence, to protect them from his ruin, or so he continued to delude himself. And in his self-imposed absence, Daniel had simply stepped into his shoes, into his bed, into his family. It was an intolerable usurpation, a theft of what he still, in his warped mind, considered his. The same meticulous planning and cunning that had once been used for his escape now turned towards a new, far more sinister purpose: a return. Not a grand, triumphant return where he would reveal his survival to a stunned world, but a subtle, insidious infiltration, a slow, deliberate re-entry into the lives he had so cruelly abandoned, driven by a desperate, pathological need to reclaim what he felt was rightfully his. He started small, renting a dilapidated, isolated cottage on the dusty, forgotten outskirts of Havenwood, far from his old haunts and the familiar, judgmental eyes of the town. He grew a thick, unkempt beard, adopted a pair of reading glasses, and even cultivated a slight limp, subtly altering his appearance, and gait just enough to avoid immediate recognition from casual acquaintances, but not so much as to be entirely unrecognizable to those who knew him best. He spent weeks, sometimes months, meticulously observing. He saw Sarah, now more mature, her face marked by experience, but still possessing the same gentle smile and quiet grace. He saw Daniel, his brother, walking hand in hand with his wife, his daughter, a picture of domestic contentment that filled Michael with a constant, simmering torment, fueling his rage and sense of injustice. He also learned, through careful eavesdropping and subtle inquiries, that Sarah, through her incredible tenacity, unwavering hard work, and Daniel's quiet financial support, had not only managed to pay off the residual debts he had left behind, but had even salvaged a small nest egg for Emily's future education. The crushing financial burden he had fled, the very reason for his grand deception, had been lifted, not by his dramatic disappearance, but by their sheer perseverance and resilience. This stark realization only intensified his bitter resentment, his festering belief that he had suffered for nothing, that his monumental sacrifice had been utterly in vain. Meanwhile, A retired Havenwood detective, Inspector Eleanor Vance, a woman known for her tenacious spirit and uncanny intuition, had never quite closed the Michael Thorne case in her mind. The pieces of the puzzle had never fully fit together. The inexplicable lack of a body, the too conveniently placed wallet, a persistent gut feeling that something was amiss. These anomalies had nagged at her for years. She had since retired from active duty, but the case remained a nagging anomaly, a tiny blemish on her otherwise perfect record of solved mysteries. A casual conversation with a former colleague about a recent string of small, seemingly unrelated break-ins targeting abandoned properties around Havenwood, coupled with whispers of a new, reclusive resident appearing on the town's periphery, sparked a dormant suspicion within her. Michael Thorne had been notoriously thorough and meticulous in his life, both in his business dealings and, as she now suspected, in his faked death. Could he be just as thorough in his return, carefully covering his tracks? Eleanor, a woman driven by intuition and an insatiable thirst for unsolved puzzles, began her own quiet, unofficial investigation. She discreetly observed the man, Mark Johnson, at the local market, noting his eyes, which were too sharp, too observant for a simple artist, and his demeanor, which was far too guarded. She observed him, subtly and from a distance, during his frequent, seemingly aimless trips into town, noticing the almost imperceptible way his gaze lingered for a beat too long on a particular house. A house she knew, definitively, had once belonged to Michael Thorne. The disjointed pieces of the puzzle began to align in her mind, not with concrete, irrefutable evidence yet, but with a chilling, undeniable logic. The ghost of Havenwood, she now strongly suspected, might just be corporeal after all. The tension in Havenwood was building, imperceptible to most of its unsuspecting residents, but keenly felt by those touched directly by the unseen shadow. Michael, consumed by a toxic cocktail of raging jealousy, simmering resentment, and a desperate, obsessive desire to reclaim his perceived stolen life, began to escalate his actions from mere observation to active torment. Anonymous phone calls to Sarah, the voice distorted and mechanical, whispering fragments of old memories, private jokes, and intimate details only Michael could possibly know. Cryptic, unsettling messages left on their answering machine. A flickering shadow, too tall to be a neighborhood cat, seen in their garden late at night. Sarah, once so strong and resilient, felt a cold dread creeping back into her life, a pervasive sense of being watched, haunted. Daniel, ever protective and now fully aware of the chilling truth, noticed her growing anxiety and began to look for answers, his vigilance sharpened by the danger. A quiet, unsettling game of cat and mouse had begun, played out in the tranquil, unsuspecting streets of Havenwood, with Sarah and Daniel as unwitting pawns caught in a dangerous game, and Michael, the ghost, slowly but surely, ready to reveal himself from the shadows. The plot thickens, does it not? The stakes are higher than ever. What do you think Michael's next move will be, now that his presence is known, even if only by a few? Do you think Sarah and Daniel will uncover the full truth and manage to protect themselves before Michael's sinister plan reaches its climax? Share your most compelling predictions in the comments below, and if you are on the edge of your seat, completely engrossed in this gripping narrative, please consider giving this video a well-deserved thumbs up and hitting that notification bell so you do not miss our next compelling, true crime-inspired story. Part 4: The Reckoning. The anonymous phone calls became more frequent, more sinister, and increasingly unsettling. A distorted, digitally altered voice, barely recognizable, yet chillingly familiar, whispering fragments of old, intimate memories, private jokes, and specific details about their past life that only Michael could possibly know. Sarah's nerves were frayed raw. her sleep stolen by a pervasive sense of unease. She recounted the calls to Daniel, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with a fear she could no longer hide. Daniel, deeply protective and increasingly alarmed by her deteriorating state, contacted the local police again, but without a clear, explicit threat or tangible, actionable evidence. They could do little more than advise caution and suggest installing call blockers. Undeterred, Daniel took matters into his own hands, installing extra security measures around their home motion, sensor lights, updated alarm systems, and reinforcing locks, his brow furrowed with a worry that settled deep in his bones. Emily, sensitive to her mother's growing anxiety and the shift in the household atmosphere, began to have nightmares, stirring restlessly in her sleep. Inspector Vance, meanwhile, operating with the quiet determination of a bloodhound, had gathered enough compelling circumstantial evidence to finally make her decisive move. She had meticulously cross-referenced Michael Thorne's old, almost obsessive habits, the specific brand of obscure, artisanal coffee he used to drink, the exact newspaper he would read cover to cover each morning, the very distinct, slightly uneven limping gait he sometimes adopted after a long day on his feet, which Mark Johnson inexplicably displayed with Mark Johnson's current routines and peculiar behaviors. Her gut feeling, once a quiet whisper, was now intensifying into an undeniable, cold certainty. She decided to approach Daniel directly, discreetly, and away from their home. Before involving Sarah, knowing the shock of this revelation could be devastating and potentially dangerous, she met Daniel at a quiet, unassuming cafe on the edge of town, choosing a secluded booth where they would not be overheard. She presented her findings carefully, laying out the evidence piece by piece, watching his face as comprehension slowly dawned, followed by a wave of stunned disbelief, then a cold, hard, burning anger that tightened his jaw. "It is Michael," she stated unequivocally, her voice low and firm, leaving no room for doubt. "He is alive, and he is here in Havenwood." Daniel felt a sudden surge of nausea, a dizzying wave of disbelief, quickly followed by a searing, all-consuming fury. The man who had abandoned them, plunged Sarah into unimaginable financial ruin, left her to grieve a ghost, and then watched passively as his own brother stepped up to bear the immense burden of her recovery, was not only alive but was now actively tormenting them. The sheer audacity, the unparalleled cruelty of it, was staggering, almost unbelievable. Daniel, his initial shock giving way to a newfound, icy steely resolve, returned home. He found Sarah in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour, trying valiantly to distract Emily with a baking project, a semblance of normalcy amidst the growing dread. He pulled Sarah aside, into the quiet living room, his face grim, his eyes reflecting the storm brewing within him. "Sarah," he began, his voice strained with the effort of control. "We need to talk. Something very serious has come up, something about Michael." As he spoke, slowly and carefully relating Eleanor Vance's chilling, impossible revelation, Sarah's face drained of all colour, becoming a ghostly white. Disbelief warred with a horrifying, undeniable clarity. The fragmented, unsettling memories, the distorted whispers on the phone, the phantom presence she had felt, it all clicked into place with a sickening thud. The man she had mourned with every fibre of her being, the ghost she had finally laid to rest, was a living, breathing lie, a cruel deception. The tears came then, not of renewed grief, but of profound, searing betrayal of an incandescent anger, and a deep, cutting hurt that twisted her gut. The life she had painstakingly rebuilt, brick by painful brick, felt as though it was crumbling around her once more. Michael, observing their home from a distance, hidden in the dense shadows of the trees at the edge of their property, saw the somber, intense conversation, felt the palpable shift in the air around the house, even from afar. He knew his time for subtle torment, for the unsettling whispers and shadows, was over. The ghost had to reveal himself, to reclaim his lost territory. He chose the next night late, when the house was dark and quiet, save for a single light burning in Sarah's bedroom, a beacon of his obsession. He slipped into the backyard, his heart pounding with a volatile mixture of fear, desperate entitlement, and a warped sense of righteous indignation. He approached the back door, his hand instinctively reaching for the key card, knowing the old security code, a code he had designed years ago, still remained active. As he entered the silent house, the familiar creak of the floorboards under his step echoing in the stillness, Daniel, who had been waiting patiently, armed with Inspector Vance's warning and his own simmering fury, was ready. He had sent Emily to stay with a trusted neighbor for the night, preparing himself for this inevitable, raw confrontation. He stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, a silent sentinel bathed in the moonlight filtering through the tall windows as Michael stepped into the shimmering light. The two brothers, once so close, sharing childhood secrets and dreams, now stood as strangers, adversaries locked in a bitter drama of Michael's own making, facing each other for the first time in 6 long years. Michael. Daniel's voice was a low, dangerous growl, laden with years of unspoken resentment, unaddressed pain, and a newfound, burning disgust. The name hung in the air, a challenge. Michael flinched violently, caught completely off guard by Daniel's presence and the raw anger in his voice. "Daniel," he stammered, his bravado momentarily gone, his composure cracking. I needed to see her. I had to see her." Daniel's voice rose, his control slipping, each word a hammer blow. "You abandoned her. You left her to clean up your colossal mess, to face financial ruin, to mourn a ghost you never were. And now you have the unmitigated gall to come back, to torment her, to destroy the fragile peace she finally found. What kind of man does that?" Sarah, drawn by the escalating, raised voices, appeared silently at the top of the stairs, her face streaked with fresh tears, her eyes blazing with a raw, visceral pain that transcended mere grief and spoke of profound betrayal. "How could you, Michael?" she whispered, her voice raw with hurt, filled with an unbearable anguish. "How could you do this to us, to me, to Emily?" The confrontation escalated rapidly. Michael, cornered and desperate, lashed out, resorting to accusations, trying to deflect blame. He accused Daniel of stealing his life, of taking advantage of his absence, of usurping his family. He tried, weakly, to justify his actions, painting himself as a victim of insurmountable circumstance, of crushing, inescapable debt. But his words rang hollow, thin and pathetic, against the backdrop of Sarah's heartbroken tears and Daniel's unwavering, righteous fury. The true crime, the most profound transgression, was not just the elaborate fake death, but the callous, breathtaking disregard for the emotional wreckage he had left behind, the deliberate, calculated cruelty of his uninvited return, tearing open old wounds. Suddenly, a decisive, authoritative knock echoed at the front door. Cutting through the raw tension, Inspector Vance, having followed her instincts and observed Mark Johnson's movements throughout the day, had arrived with a uniformed officer, their presence a stark, official intrusion into the raw, private drama unfolding within. The dangerous game was undeniably over. Michael, caught fully in the harsh headlights of his own monstrous deception, his carefully constructed facade crumbling, finally crumpled. He offered no resistance as he was taken into custody, the full, crushing weight of his actions finally catching up to him. The crime, a complex, intricate web of elaborate fraud, identity theft, and profound emotional cruelty, had finally found its reckoning in the quiet town of Havenwood. The days and weeks that followed Michael's arrest were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. A public spectacle that Havenwood devoured with a mix of shock, morbid fascination, and a collective sigh of relief. Michael faced multiple charges, including fraud, identity theft, and other related offences pertaining to his elaborate deception. The truth, ugly and undeniably painful, was laid bare for all to see in the glaring light of the courtroom. Sarah and Daniel, though exhausted and deeply scarred by the ordeal, had to relive the nightmare, providing detailed statements, facing the intense scrutiny of the media, and confronting the man who had caused them so much pain. It was an agonizing, emotionally draining process, but they faced it together. Their bond now stronger than ever, forged in the relentless fires of shared adversity and validated truth. Michael Thorne was eventually convicted and sentenced to a substantial prison term, his grand, self-serving scheme of escape collapsing under the overwhelming weight of its own deceit and the irrefutable evidence against him. His new life as Mark Johnson evaporated into nothingness, replaced by the stark, inescapable reality of cold prison walls and the profound consequences of his choices. Sarah and Daniel, though forever scarred by the ordeal and the lingering trauma, found a new, deeper kind of peace together. The ghost of Michael Thorne was finally, truly gone, not through death, but through the irrefutable, healing power of justice and accountability. They were finally free to live their lives, free from the insidious shadow of deception, embracing a future built on unwavering honesty, quiet resilience, and the enduring, quiet power of true, authentic love. This was a story of a man who chose elaborate deception over personal responsibility and the profound, far-reaching ripple effects of his catastrophic choice, effects that echoed for years through the lives of those he claimed to love. What did you find most surprising about this entire ordeal, from Michael's initial disappearance to his shocking return and the eventual reckoning? Share your deepest thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your engagement means the world to us, and we cherish every perspective. This complex tale of Michael, Sarah, and Daniel offers several profound and timeless lessons, stretching beyond the confines of a simple crime story. First, and perhaps most critically, the true cost of deception is almost always far greater and more destructive than the problem it initially attempts to solve. Michael thought he was merely escaping financial debt and the pressures associated with it, but in reality, he plunged his family, especially Sarah and Emily, into a deep abyss of emotional devastation, profound grief, and crushing financial ruin. His carefully constructed web of dishonesty did not liberate him. Instead, it created a tangled, suffocating knot that ultimately ensnared not only the deceiver himself, but also, and more tragically, those closest to him. Facing challenges head-on, no matter how daunting or difficult they may appear, and seeking honest solutions, is ultimately a less destructive and far more sustainable path than resorting to elaborate lies and fraudulent schemes. The temporary relief of escape often leads to a far more complex and painful reckoning. Second, resilience is an incredibly powerful and inherent human force. Sarah's arduous journey, from the depths of profound grief and overwhelming financial despair to painstakingly rebuilding her life from scratch and ultimately finding renewed love and a deep sense of peace, is an inspiring testament to the human spirit's remarkable capacity to endure, adapt, and ultimately thrive in the face of unimaginable adversity. Even when life throws its absolute worst at you, stripping away everything you hold dear, it is indeed possible to find hidden reservoirs of strength within yourself and courageously build a new, more authentic future. Her story is a beacon of hope for anyone navigating personal tragedy. Third, genuine love and unwavering support are invaluable pillars in times of crisis and beyond. Daniel's consistent, unwavering presence for Sarah, his quiet strength, his practical assistance, and his profound empathy highlight the indispensable importance of true connection and unconditional support. He did not attempt to fix her or dictate her path. Instead, he simply supported her as she healed and bravely rebuilt her life on her own terms. This poignant example shows that the most profound and enduring love is often found not in grand, dramatic gestures, but in consistent, compassionate presence, unwavering loyalty, and the quiet, steadfast willingness to stand by someone through their darkest hours. Finally, and a recurring theme in human drama, secrets always, inevitably, have a way of surfacing. No matter how meticulously planned, how cleverly executed, or how deeply buried, a life built on a foundation of deceit is fundamentally unsustainable. The truth, in one form or another, eventually reveals itself, often at the most inconvenient and devastating moments, and frequently with unforeseen, catastrophic consequences for all involved. Living authentically, even when it is incredibly difficult, even when it means confronting uncomfortable truths, is ultimately the only path to true personal freedom, inner peace, and meaningful, trustworthy relationships. Hiding from reality only postpones and intensifies its inevitable arrival. My advice to you, dear viewer, is this: when faced with overwhelming difficulties, whether they are financial, emotional, or personal, do not hesitate to seek help and lean on your support systems. Whether it is professional financial counseling, therapy for emotional support, or simply confiding in a trusted friend or family member, please do not try to carry the entire burden alone. Honesty, even when it is initially painful or uncomfortable, paves the clearest way for genuine solutions, fosters stronger relationships, and allows for authentic healing. Life is full of complex challenges and unforeseen obstacles, but it is ultimately how we choose to face them with courage, integrity, or deception that truly defines us. Choosing integrity, even in the bleakest moments of despair, will always invariably lead to a more fulfilling, more peaceful, and far less turbulent path in the long run. If this story resonated deeply with you, if it sparked introspection, prompted a moment of quiet reflection, or simply provided a captivating and thought-provoking moment of entertainment, please take a second to hit that like button. Your support, your engagement, and your feedback genuinely help us continue to create more compelling narratives and thought-provoking content. Do not forget to comment below with your biggest takeaway, your most profound reflection, or any questions you might have from this intricately woven story. And if you want to be notified of our next deep dive into the fascinating and often unsettling corners of the human condition, be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell. Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey into the unseen shadow.